Since we are 6 days out from what was meant to be our leaving of the European Union and could still be 6 days depending on what happens today, I thought I'd run down what could happen if the EU says yes or no to the extension. Now, there are a couple of things that have already been tabled. For example, Boris Johnson is preemptively planning for an early general election. The problem with this is he does not hold a majority to have one. He had enough because he managed to convince enough Labour MPs to vote for the deal. But they will not want an early general election, not least because Labour in most, if not all opinion polls, lose a lot of seats, and I mean more than 50, possibly 100 depending on how well the Liberal Democrats do. I mean the illiberal undemocratics. Jacob Rees-Mogg mentioned in yesterday's Parliament that there would be a vote next week, possibly on Monday, to ascertain whether or not this could happen. Labour have said they'll vote for it if no deal is taken off the table, but this is where the problem lies. You've already voted for a deal, although you, the majority of your party, did not. There is a majority in Parliament, though, to get a deal across the line. But Labour have said, no, take no deal off the table, under the guise that a deal didn't already get through. So it should be quite interesting to see if a precondition can be agreed upon from a second party. So what could happen? On October 28th, MPs are going to vote on an early general election. And this is the part we need to go through first. If it is passed, the Brexit bill returns with a new timetable. If it does, the bill could pass. If it does, the Brexit with deal will be announced on a date that has to be confirmed around the time of the general election on December 12th. If the bill returns and it passes, but does not go any further, there will just be a general election on December 12th. And if the Brexit bill returns with a new timetable and no one says yes to that, it instead just goes straight to an election without the bill being passed. If MPs reject an early general election, a vote of no confidence can be triggered. Failing that, no deal Brexit on a new date, which means we leave without a deal in place. If the vote goes against the government and no early election happens, an election can happen on a later date, and the final one, which I would not want, is another referendum. The single most undemocratic thing to do would be to ignore the first vote under the guise of saying, but the people have a right to choose again. Nice. Because, and I've said this many times, nothing screams democracy more than saying, oi, can you keep doing this until we get the answer we want? The EU is currently expected to announce today whether or not they will grant an extension, and if so, how long for. France has taken the position of, if we give them more time, they will just be as indecisive. Although I'm sure many of the leaders will have noticed the withdrawal agreement got through, and it wasn't the government that is to blame for this. It was entirely Labour and the SNP. SNP because they don't want to leave, and Labour because we respect the vote, everyone, but we also don't want to leave. All 27 EU nations must agree to an extension. If they agree to an extension until, let's say, the 31st of January 2020, then that will become the new date for us leaving. If the EU proposes another date other than that date of the 31st of January 2020, even a short, what is called a technical extension of a few days, the Prime Minister must approve it unless a motion is put before MPs and they decide not to pass it. Now this one intrigues me the most, because if they said, okay, you get 5 days. If they said, better yet, you get 6 days. Oh no, actually, you get 1 day. It doesn't matter. If they don't give 3 months, many people are going to be quite panicky, because they then realise the EU has then, at that point, put them in a position where they now have no choice. There are many mechanisms that exist within Parliament, and the only option left to them, because they certainly can't do enough referendum, the only option they'll have is to either vote for the deal, revoke Article 50, or accept no deal. They will then understand it is entirely, well, for the sake of it, binary. Although 3 options. But you know what I mean. I'm certain one or two of you won't, but to those pedantic shits, hi. If the EU refuses to grant the United Kingdom a delay, then we will leave on the 31st October at 11 p.m. GMT. Leaving without a deal means we would immediately exit the customs union and single market, arrangements that exist to make trading between nations easier. Now, since it has become more than that, it is a problem. Just for the sake of it, because I want to make this point quite clear, of all the parties in the House of Commons, the currently 17-strong Liberal Democrats, because the SNP are the only ones that can't, if the Liberal Democrats ever got a majority, they are the only party that have outright said they would revoke Article 50 and cancel Brexit. Because they represent the people, yo. I ignored the SNP, by the way, because they only represent Scotland's interests, and because they'll never have enough seats to command a majority because they are only a Scottish nationalist party. Although I'm not going to deny, imagine Ian Blackford as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom as a member of the Scottish Nationalist Party, putting the interests of the entire Union on a level playing field as opposed to what he usually does, which is what would be very funny for him to then try and do, and put Scotland first, while molesting the ream of paper he always has, and watching him attempt to not squirm when placed under considerable pressure, although I'm not sure he'll fit between the space between his seat and the dispatch box anyway.